Hello again, everybody. It's me. How are you? Hope you're all safe and healthy and doing well. Today, we are going to begin talking about proofreading. Proofreading is the final step that you take in revising your essay. Often, it's the most difficult. Why? Because if you've been doing what we've been talking about, by now you have read and reread and reread your essay so many times that by this point, you think it's saying what you mean it to say rather than exactly what's written on the paper. And your essay has to be clear on paper or on the screen so that your reader will know exactly what you're writing about as you're trying to convey your thesis. The more we read our own stuff, the more we think it says what we meant it to say rather than what it really says. Now, how do we break out of that? How do we break out of seeing what's actually written rather than what we think is written? One of the things that we can do to begin seeing that is to begin recognizing common errors that we make. So what I'm going to do for the next few classes is we're going to be going over the most common errors made by college writers. And as we do this, pay attention. Do you see something here that you do frequently? If so, let's recognize it. Let's become more familiar with it. Let's familiarize ourselves with why it's a mistake. And that way, if you know what it is, maybe you'll see it better in the future. All right. So now I want you to go to the Google Doc document that I've shared with you for today's class. And it has to do with common errors. And we're going to cover, there are 20 common errors we're going to review. We're going to go 5 at a time so as not to overwhelm you. And as we're doing this, try to pay attention and see if some of these errors are things that you do by accident as you write your essays. Okay, so the first one is called missing comma after introductory element. What is an introductory element? An introductory element is a word or phrase that introduces your sentence, that introduces the idea that you're trying to get across. For example, the first sentence is, "To tell the truth, I never liked coffee." The phrase "to tell the truth" is the introductory phrase in this sentence. So it needs to be separated from the rest of the sentence with a comma. Because introductory elements have to be separated with a comma. So to write it correctly, you would write, "To tell the truth, comma, I never liked coffee." Look at the next one. Determined to get the job done, we worked all weekend. Determined to get the job done is the introductory element, the introductory phrase. So it would read, determined to get the job done, comma, we worked all weekend. An introductory element, by the way, doesn't have to be a phrase. It can be one word. Look at that first sentence again. Take out "to tell the truth," replace it with "frankly." Frankly, I never liked coffee. Frankly, comma, I never liked coffee. So if you have something that is an introductory element to a sentence, it's separated from the rest of the sentence by a comma. And look at the third sentence there. Because of its isolation in a rural area surrounded by mountains, Crawford Notch doesn't get many visitors. The very long phrase, because of its isolation in a rural area surrounded by mountains, is an introductory element. It is an introductory element that modifies the noun Crawford Notch. Okay, do you follow me? That introductory element is modifying the noun Crawford Notch. Because of its isolation in a rural area surrounded by mountains, comma, Crawford Notch doesn't get many visitors. Okay? To go back to that first sentence, to tell the truth is not something you would generally write in an essay. So if you see it in your essay, it's not something that belongs in an academic paper unless you're using it specifically for effect. To tell the truth is something we say commonly in speech. To tell the truth, and then you say something. When you're writing an academic paper, the reader always assumes that you're telling the truth. So you don't need it. Now, think about why we use that phrase. Do we use it to tell the reader that we're telling the truth? Or when we use that phrase in speech, do we use it to emphasize to the person that we're about to tell the truth? No, it's a shorthand of spoken English. In that means the same as the word frankly. Frankly, I don't like coffee. And it's not done to tell the reader or the listener that you're talking to that you're about to tell the truth or that you're about to be frank with them. It's really more of a piece of spoken language that is shorthand for the common shorthand today would be, let's keep it real. Keeping it real, being 100, I never liked coffee. Right? This is just a shorthand to say, this is actually a truth that I haven't told you yet. But to be truthful, I never liked coffee, as this sentence reads. Do you understand what I'm saying? I wish we could be doing this in person, because this lesson is really a conversation we should be having rather than a lecture from me on video. But there are things that we put in, or there are things that we say in spoken English that we don't have to write out in written English. To tell the truth, it's a waste of time putting that in an essay, because in a piece of writing, the reader assumes that you're telling the truth. So when a writer uses the phrase to tell the truth to introduce a sentence, it's not so much to tell the reader that, yes, I'm telling you something truthfully now. It's really more something that a writer uses to sound more casual. Do you understand what I'm saying? When a writer uses a phrase like to tell the truth, it's really an attempt to make the piece of writing sound to the ear more casual, more conversational, right? So if a rule is, don't use the word to tell the truth, because you don't need to tell the reader that you're telling the truth. An effective way to bend or break that rule is if you're trying to write something that sounds more casual and more like spoken conversation. You see what I'm saying here? We're getting a little meta for this discussion, but in writing, there are rules, and then there are times when a writer might bend or break a rule. This is one of those times. If you go back to some of those essays we read in the New York Times that sounded more conversational, more informal, look for where they pepper it with words and phrases like to tell the truth or honestly, or, honestly, I didn't care much for that movie. Frankly, that movie was kind of dumb. You use that in an essay to try and sound more conversational. And I'm not telling you this so that you can go and sound conversational in the essays you write. I'm telling you this because often I have students who say, well, look, this writer did this. If I did that, you'd get me an F. The answer is yes, because that author knows how to bend or break a rule for an effect. So this is one of those times, okay? That's a little bit of a side trip, but it's interesting in terms of writing and rules of writing. Okay, next common error, vague pronoun reference. We talked about this when we were going over sentences from your essays. A pronoun is a word that replaces a noun. An antecedent is the noun that is replaced by that pronoun. So whenever you use a pronoun, it must be very clear what noun that pronoun is taking the place of. For example, transmitting radio signals by satellite is a way of overcoming the problem of scarce airwaves and limiting how they are used. The pronoun here, as you know, I'm sure, is they, but what noun is it replacing? Is it replacing airwaves? Is it replacing radio signals? We don't know. Transmitting radio signals by satellite is a way of overcoming the problem of scarce airwaves and limiting how they are used. We don't know if it means radio signals. We don't know if it means, we don't know if we're limiting the radio signals or if we're limiting the airwaves. The way I would read, if I did that in a draft, which would be fine because a draft is where you are supposed to be able to make whatever mistakes you need to make to get the ideas out of your brain and out on paper. That's what a draft is for. And you're allowed to make any mistake you want in a draft as long as you fix it in a revision later. So if I wrote that sentence in a draft, the way I would revise it is, transmitting radio signals by satellite is a way of overcoming the problem of scarce airwaves and limiting how those airwaves are used. All right, so you see what I did there. All I did was I took out the pronoun and I replaced it with, I just put the noun back in there. Does it sound a little repetitive? Yeah, a little bit, but that's okay because now it is absolutely clear what I mean. Take another example. Troopers burned a refugee camp as a result of the earlier attack. This was the cause of the war. The pronoun is this. Is it replacing earlier attack? Is it replacing the action, of burning the refugee camp? We don't know. So I would recast this as, troopers burned a refugee camp as a result of the earlier attack. Their action was the cause of the war. There's no doubt that there is the possessive pronoun of troopers. There's no doubt the way this is written now because, there just isn't. Troopers burned a refugee camp as a result of the earlier attack. Their action was the cause of the war. So now we know that their burning the refugee camp was the cause of the war and not the earlier attack. Company policy prohibited smoking and many employees resented it. Did they resent the policy or did they resent smoking? We don't know. Company policy prohibited smoking and many employees resented the rule. Now we know because I've put in, I've simply found a synonym for policy, which is rule. Company policy prohibited smoking and many employees resented the rule. Now we know. So again, it's a way to be as clear as possible. And in my own writing, when I revise, I often find myself thinking, how can I make this clearer? And I wind up replacing pronouns with the nouns they replace, just so that I'm absolutely clear. So if this is a problem you run into, what you can do is as you revise, watch out for pronouns. Watch out for he, she, them, their, my, his, her, all kinds of pronouns and possessive pronouns, and make sure that the antecedent is clear. Okay? Next, missing comma in a compound sentence. We discussed this briefly last time. A compound sentence, rather, is a sentence where you take two groups of words that can stand on their own as sentences, and you join them with a comma and a conjunction. All right, conjunction being and, if, but, Okay, I had to think back to my Conjunction Junction song. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that. There used to be a great cartoon cartoon series. It would be bits of cartoons they played during the commercials, and it would be little cartoon music videos about different parts of speech. They did one called Conjunction Junction, which was very famous, and people of a certain age all grew up with that. Um, Go ahead and Google Conjunction Junction. You'll be able to watch it. It's like 2 minutes long. And you will never get that musical phrase out of your mind. Conjunction Junction, what's your function? Okay, anyway. So when you create a compound sentence by joining two sentences together with a conjunction, you must also use a comma. For example, we wish dreamily on a star and then we look down to find ourselves standing in mud. Okay, that would be rewritten as we wish dreamily on a star, comma, and then we look down to find ourselves standing in the mud. Those are two different groups of words that can stand as sentences that are joined by a comma and a conjunction. The words I write may sound simple, but they mean a life commitment. The words I write may sound simple. They mean a life commitment. Those are two different sentences, complete sentences, that we're joining by writing. The words I write may sound simple, comma, but they mean a life commitment. Okay? So again, a comma and a conjunction. Next, wrong word. I find this a lot in student essays because students are trying to, as I've talked about before, mimic an academic language that they have not quite completely mastered. And the result is they often misspell a word and create a different word, or they just use a wrong word altogether. For example, the Pacers played their best, but that was not good enough. The wrong word, of course, is there, because T-H-E-R-E means there, over there, a location. There, T-H-E-I-R, is the plural possessive pronoun of they. So the Pacers played their best, but that was not good enough, T-H-E-I-R. All right. Next, Paradise Lost contains many allusions to classical mythology. True, it does, but not illusions, I. Allusions, A. Illusions is when you see something that isn't really there. It's an illusion. Allusion means a reference, which is what the sentence here is trying to convey. Paradise Lost contains many allusions to classical mythology. And then sometimes a student will pick, remember we've talked about shades of meaning of different words. He noticed the stench of roses as he entered the room. Stench refers to a smell that is not particularly pleasant. So you wouldn't associate that with roses generally. So you might use, he noticed the aroma of roses as he entered the room. Or you might use, he noticed the scent of roses as he entered the room, but not scent, C-E-N-T, or scent, S-E-N-T. It would be scent, S-C-E-N-T. Again, this is where thesaurus comes in handy. If you're thinking of the word stench, and you can't, but no, that's not the right word, what else can I use? So you go to thesaurus.com, type in stench in the box, and it will give you all kinds of different shades of meaning of the word. Okay, there's something flying around here. Hold on. Okay, I just got buzzed by something. That was a little scary. Shades of meaning. You wouldn't use the word stench. You would find another one. You'd pick another word out of that list. Stench means, again, something unpleasant and overpowering. Aroma is a shade of meaning of the word smell. Scent is another shade of meaning. Scent generally means a very light, subtle smell. That would be a scent. An aroma might be a smell that's more present. So depending on what you meant, you would pick out the appropriate word. And again, when you use a thesaurus, the words are not interchangeable. So don't go to a thesaurus to find the fanciest word that you can find. Go to find the most accurate word, precision, because that makes clarity, which will allow you to convey your idea more effectively to your reader. Okay? All right, attendance question time. I'm quite proud of this one. For this attendance question, I would like you to give me the name of 2 or 3 famous or notable people with whom you share a birthday. And I don't mean exact the day, your birthday, the year when you were born, just the day. For example, I share my birthday with former President Woodrow Wilson, with Stan Lee. You all know who Stan Lee is, Marvel Comics icon, co-creator of many of the famous superheroes we know and love today. Stan Lee, I share my birthday with him. Woodrow Wilson was born on my birthday in 1856. Stan Lee in 1922. I also share my birthday with Maggie Smith. If you were a fan of Harry Potter or Downton Abbey, you know Maggie Smith. I share my birthday, and we're going to add some little music to this attendance question. I share my birthday with Edgar Winter, who is the writer and performer of this song, which is called Frankenstein, which was very big when I was young. It's an awesome song. I'll stop it now in case it's too loud. I also share my birthday with Ray Knight, former third baseman of the New York Mets. Denzel Washington. You all know who Denzel Washington is, one of the great actors of his time. And Seth Meyers. I share my birthday with him. And thought he was on this. Yeah, John Legend, not John Lennon, John Legend. I share my birthday with him. All different years, but all born on my birthday. So now you guys know when my birthday is. I want to know the names of some famous or notable people with whom you share a birthday. Okay, and I'll leave that up to you to figure out how to research. It's not hard. Okay, and our final, excuse me, 1 second, my bug has landed. Okay, the bug has been disposed of. All right, the final common error that we're going to go over today is missing commas with a non-restrictive element. A non-restrictive element is a phrase that appears in your sentence, but does not necessarily affect the meaning of the sentence. In other words, it's additional information that's included in the sentence that is not necessary for us to understand the meaning of the sentence. It's just additional information, okay? Let me give you some examples. Marina, who was president of the club, was first to speak. The way that sentence is written properly is Marina, comma, who was president of the club, comma, was first to speak. The idea that the sentence is trying to get across is that Marina was the first to speak, right? That's the idea of the sentence. That's the thought behind that sentence. Marina was first to speak. What the non-restrictive element adds is that she was president of the club. So again, it's extra information we're learning about Marina. that doesn't alter the meaning of the sentence, but just adds a little information to it. The second sentence, Louis was forced to call a session of the Estates General, which had not met for 175 years, right? Louis was forced to call a session of the Estates General, comma, which had not met for 175 years. The meaning of the sentence is that Louis was forced to call a session of the Estates General. That's the thought the sentence is trying to get across to you. It's adding the idea that it had not met for 175 years. That is an element of the sentence that does not change the meaning of the sentence, but just adds a little extra information to it that, you know, is not necessary, but may be helpful. Kristen's first doll, Malibu Barbie, is still her favorite. Kirsten's first doll, comma, Malibu Barbie, comma, is still her favorite. The idea that the author is trying to get across is that Kirsten's first doll is still her favorite. What it's adding, it's just adding the little bit of information of what that doll was specifically. All of these non-restrictive elements you can take out, and the sentence would still mean essentially the same thing. Kristen's first doll is still her favorite. Okay. Marina was first to speak. Okay, you still get those. You can take out those non-restrictive elements, and the sentence would mean essentially the same. You'd just be missing that little bit of background information. All right, so those are the first 5 common errors that you can look out for when revising your essay, when proofreading your essay, which again is the final step. Make sure you have a thesis, your whole essay supports the thesis, that everything in your essay is directly related to and supporting your thesis, that thesis addresses the assignment, and that you have a structure that is conveying the thesis. All of that first, then in proofreading, you look for these kinds of errors. All right? We are going to go over the next 5 errors on Friday. Essay assignment 19, where you are returning essays to me with comments, is due by noon. So if you, today, if you handed in a draft of essay 3, then I sent you a draft of another student's essay. I'm sorry, I sent you a copy of another student's essay draft. Assignment 19 asked for you to comment on it and return it to me. That draft with comments is due back to me by noon today, Wednesday the 22nd. Later in the day on Wednesday, I will return those essays to their rightful owners. And if you handed in an essay to me, you will get back an essay with comments. Revision of essay 3 will then be due on, let's make it Wednesday the 29th. All right, I was gonna make it Monday, but let's make it instead Wednesday the 29th. I want to leave time in case anybody has any questions or problems or anything with their essays. We can meet, we can talk on the phone, we can talk on Skype. I encourage you, if you have any questions at all about essay 3, by all means get in touch with me and we will make arrangements. If I can't answer your question by email, we'll make arrangements to talk on Skype or on the phone. So your revision for essay 3 is due on Wednesday, April 29th. All right. Next week, I will also assign essay 4, which is going to be your last essay. I had planned on doing 5 in the class, but you know, circumstances being what they are, we're going to make it 4. All right. So Please make sure you get essay 3 to me in on time, so that if you need extra time to revise it again, if you get it back with a grade on it, you will have time to revise it again for a higher grade. Also on Friday, I am going to set due dates for any of you who wish to revise essays 1 or 2. You've gotten those back with your grades. If you want to revise them again for a higher grade, you can. I strongly suggest you talk to me beforehand so that you know exactly what you need to be doing. And I'm going to set due dates for those revisions. I'll set those on Friday, because I don't want to just leave them all till the end of the semester, because what will happen is I'll get a whole bunch of people who wait until the last week and then they revise everything at once, and it doesn't give you time enough to do a good job, and it doesn't give me time enough to grade them adequately. So I will set those due dates on Friday. Okay, if there's any questions or problems, please email me at the usual address. Send your attendance question response to this address. The results of the last attendance question, overwhelmingly, students want me to keep the beard but trim it. So maybe by Friday, definitely over the weekend by the latest, I'm going to trim this down, and I'm going to look, I'm going to trim this stuff down, and I'm going to look somewhat more like a human being again. So thank you for your responses to those. Your attendance question goes to this address. Any questions or problems, this address. All right, that's it for today. Please continue to be safe and stay healthy, and I will see you Friday morning on YouTube. All right, thanks. So long, everybody. Bye.